Hey everyone, it's me again. Today I wanted to do a little follow-up video regarding Wolfsbane from yesterday's video, since a lot of people left some comments, very helpful comments telling me about some of the quirks that they had discovered when testing this weapon, specifically with stuff like Outbreak Perfected. So today I did a little bit of extra testing, and I want to kind of deliver a little follow-up conclusion on the sword/axe in today's video. So two things, Outbreak and also alternative combos, which we'll discuss after we're done talking about Outbreak. So first, Outbreak. So for those of you that don't know, Outbreak Perfected, the nanites that swarm when you damage a target and you do like every 12 hits or whatever, they benefit Wolfsbane to some degree. And you might be asking, so how does it benefit? Like, does it increase the damage? Does it increase the rate at which that you get healing? The rate at which you get your bar for nano assault? We're going to be answering all those different questions. So first is damage. How much damage does Outbreak Perfected's nanites actually add to Wolfsbane? And the answer is the damage scales up to a 25% gain. So I'll show you the evidence right now. Wolfsbane Outbreak damage. I have a teammate here who is just dry stacking nanites on Savathun with 0 threadcutter stacks, which is enabling him to just not kill her outright. So I'm just sitting here, I'm waiting for the nanites to fully charge up. He notifies me that the nanites are pretty much fully charged up, and I'm going to start hunting for these wizards here. So I kill the last one here, boom. I get 3 threadcutter stacks, which is what I used to test on this boss. I swap to Wolfsbane, and I go over, I place my well, and I damage the boss like that. Boom, 8,006. 8,006. So that's the number I want you to remember. 8,006 with max nanites active. Now, if we go ahead and we look at the weapons tab of my spreadsheet here, you'll see that Wolfsbane, I'm going to zoom in here a little bit more for the mobile users, 6,405 damage under the same circumstances with no max nanites was the number that I got previously. And with Outbreak, as you saw, it was 8,006. Which is the same number, conveniently, that you get if you have Nano Assault, right? So that is a 25% increase to damage. And Nano Assault, if you're wondering, is also 25% increase to your damage on light attacks if you have it active. And do they stack? Yes, they do, but we'll discuss that in just a second. So that's damage. Now, what about scaling over time? What do I mean by this? So Outbreak Perfected applies a sort of nanite debuff to targets, not like an actual global debuff, but like a nanite debuff. I believe it's called Disease Vector. And the way that it works is when you have nanites attached to a target, I believe Outbreak does 25% more to that target, if I'm not mistaken. The thing is, it's not just this debuff appears, I think it's 25%, right? So it appears to work with Wolfsbane. However, it's not like as soon as you have nanites on a target, Wolfsbane immediately does 25% more. That would make this a lot more appealing. What I found is that until you scale to max nanites, the damage that Wolfsbane does also increases over that period. So instead of getting 25% as soon as that, nanite debuff is active, you actually go from 0 to 25% until you have max nanites, right? So you need to have max nanites for this to work. So keep this in mind because it's going to affect the viability of this axe sword when we discuss it more when it comes to damage profile. Next is components. So you're saying 25%, that sounds pretty good. But what if it only works on the light attack? What if it only works on the cyclone? What if it only works on specific parts? Well, rest assured, I tested Wolfsbane with every single component. Light attack, area light, heavy slam, the scorch wave, the cyclones, the scorch from the cyclones, etc. All of it scales to 25%. So essentially treat it like a 25% damage perk, right? So components, the whole thing gets buffed. You can just multiply the raw damage of Wolfsbane, no matter how you use it, by 25% if you have max nanites on a target from Outbreak. Now, nanite fall off. I had a question, and it was, Wolfsbane obviously generates nanites, so can it continue to generate Outbreak's nanites even though someone with Outbreak stops shooting? For those of you that don't know, when you embed a target with Outbreak nanites and you refresh this effect, you have 9 seconds before the nanites expire. And so I got a friend and and let me go ahead and grab it over here. Yeah, Wolfsbane Outbreak fall off. This is the right clip. You can see here the damage numbers are not going up. They continue to stay at 136. So the boss is currently at max nanite stack. So I go ahead and swap off to Wolfsbane. And my friend, he keeps shooting here. He keeps shooting. And he stops shooting like right around here, right? Let's just say like right here. Yeah, he stopped shooting right about here. 10 seconds. You see I do 729 damage to the boss on my light attacks. We're going to wait. I'm going to skip past here a little bit. And at just around 19 seconds, which is in a second here, you'll see my numbers go back down to 583, 25% less. So unfortunately, Wolfsbane is not able to keep that nanite effect, self-sustaining by itself. You need someone with Outbreak to consistently do damage to the boss, or at least once every 7 or 8 seconds to ensure that the nanites stay refreshed. Okay, so that's unfortunate. That's another thing to keep in mind. And then finally, nanite bar fill. So I received some reports that Outbreak, the nanite swarm, helps Wolfsbane build its bar faster. And initially, it didn't really seem like this was the case. I was sitting under a boss while my teammate was shooting it with Outbreak, and I wasn't really getting any nanite fill from it, at least as far as I was seeing. We didn't test for that long, so maybe over a really long period of time, there'd be something going on. However, what I did test was having a teammate do Outbreak, and then testing a specific combo that I did beforehand, so during yesterday's testing compared to today. So I want you to go ahead and take a look at this. So remember yesterday, I believe I said the amount of light attacks that it takes if you cancel, so if you swap off of your Wolfsbane after doing a heavy cyclone while the nano assault timer is still running, you get a little bit of a refund, and then it takes you around 10 to 12 light attacks to fully fill up your bar once again. Notice how long it takes here. So I activate, I'm going to skip forward a little bit here. And then heavy, I swap off, I swap back on, I get my refund, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and we're full, right? So you definitely can't get your bar filled up in 7 or 8 hits if you don't have Outbreak active here. So definitely there is some effect, but it appears to be strictly for when you are actually hitting the boss. So maybe Outbreak increases the yield of nanites that you get upon hitting the boss, but if you just sit there underneath the boss with your, axe, it's not going to give you any stacks just passively. Okay, so that is all I wanted to talk about when it comes to Outbreak and my data observations. Now let's actually talk about some analysis. Is this worth doing? Does this make Wolfsbane usable? So I'm going to zoom out a little bit. Sorry, mobile users. We're going to go to the sustain tab. I filtered this tab by power weapons, and I want you to go ahead and take a look at the Wolfsbane entry that makes it the highest when it comes to DPS. So as you can see here, let me just go ahead and skip to it. That's right over here. So ignore this combo stuff. We'll talk about that in a second in the second part of this video, which will hopefully not be too long. But yes, you see, I put 8 lights to regenerate here. So I counted for the fact that Outbreak makes your build a little bit accelerated. You saw 7 in that video, in that clip, but I found 7 to be maybe a little bit inconsistent. So I went with 8. 8 lights to regenerate, swapping after you do a little bit of a combo and you stow your sword. You end on heavy light because I calculated that's kind of how much ammo you would have left toward the end with Outbreak Perfected max nanites. And the DPS is, in fact, 3,300. It is 3,300. Now, let's put that into context. Is 3,300 DPS good in today's meta? No. New Malpais found itself in the same region, and then I believe Mint Retrograde is like 3.5 or like 3.8 or something like that, and those are special weapons, right? Those are special weapons. One thing you might notice here, though, is that this is a very large outlier when it comes to total damage. Yesterday, I mentioned with yesterday's metrics that the total damage was pretty impressive, but swords always have impressive total damage because of Relentless Strikes and Pack Hunter, etc. And so it's not a crazy number, yesterday's numbers, but today, this number, 250k, unless I've calculated something wrong here, this is up there with stuff like 4 times a charm target lock machine gun. So in terms of heavy weapon damage, this is a very big outlier in total damage. The way I see it is it's kind of like New Land Beyond, because New Land Beyond is also like a very, very big outlier for total damage when it comes to specials. It's just that this is a heavy weapon, right? So it's a heavy New Land Beyond. That's kind of the identity that this weapon has now. However, New Land Beyond is good just on its own. Obviously, you need to pre-stack a little bit because it's a little bit inefficient during damage if you don't, but it's very, very good on its own. This weapon, the kind of asterisk that you need to be aware of is that you need someone shooting the boss with Outbreak constantly. Outbreak, a weapon that's kind of been shunned by the endgame community because of its super regen properties being nerfed, and the fact that PKSMG is generally just higher DPS and just more preferred by most people and isn't an exotic, so you can use it with Finality's Augur. And so you have to have literally someone on Outbreak to reach this level of DPS. If you drop the 25% value, and of course, it would be worse DPS because this would drop to like 10 lights or 12 lights or something like that, you see the DPS and the total damage drop off significantly. So this is kind of misleading. 3,300 DPS, even if we give this, the benefit of the doubt here, we put it in its best circumstances, right? We give it Outbreak, right? We just completely ignore your teammates and we give it Outbreak. We don't account for the fact that your team DPS is going to be lowered by someone being on Outbreak while everyone else is on an axe. It's still 3,300 DPS. And when we put that in context and we talked about Mint Retrograde, we talked about New Malpais, even when we talk about other swords, right? On other bosses, like on other swords, 3,300 DPS, you're comparing it to stuff like Sinancia, you're comparing it to stuff like Ill-Omen, even weapons that do not have a surrounded perk. So like something like Honing ×5 instead, you see a bunch of swords outperform this thing when it comes to DPS, right? So maybe in the future, if we get like a very long phase sword boss, but even then, I mean, there's other weapons that you could use instead. I don't know. It's a bit of a weird one. I could see the axe being like okay. I don't know, honestly. This is with the Outbreak thing. Without the Outbreak thing, the axe, I mean, falls to what, like 2600 DPS? I mean, and I literally have an entry for what the axe looks like without Outbreak, right? So if we go down to Wolfsbane here, sorry, not this one. Yeah, this is more the one that you're looking for. So 190k total is pretty good. 70, 70 seconds, that's pretty long. Pretty would cover any sort of long damage phase, to be honest. And then you have what, like 2700 DPS? I mean, like, I mean, I guess, wow, that's actually very convenient. It falls right next to Lament. So I guess this is the successor to Lament, I suppose, right? And of course, this doesn't account for the fact that you have stuff like Relentless Strikes coming down the pipeline. You have the recursion thing coming down the pipeline. You have Burning Ambition, which could potentially increase the damage of this weapon as well. So yeah, in the future, I expect with Catalyst and stuff like that, the performance will go a little bit higher compared to some of these other swords here. But really, this thing does like legendary sword DPS, right? Like mid-tier legendary sword DPS, but it has a bit more total damage. I mean, man, when you don't account for the Outbreak thing, which again is going to neuter one person's damage, when you don't account for the Outbreak thing, it's really like, if you look at Gold Tusk, I mean, just look at the raw damage profile, right? Just look at the raw damage profile. Gold Tusk doesn't need any pre-stacking, and it's a legendary weapon, so you could equip Horseman or something like that to increase your damage. And you have essentially very similar total damage values, and this thing has worse DPS than Gold Tusk, right? So, yeah, not the greatest. Yeah, that's kind of my conclusion on this. It's a unique quirk, right? It's a unique quirk, don't get me wrong, but even when you... And keep in mind, by the way, I mentioned earlier, you need to have, ideally, someone solo on Outbreak, right? Because if you have multiple people on Outbreak, and then they swap, you're going to have very little heavy ammo, or half your heavy ammo on Wolfsbane, and you're not going to have Nano Assault pre-charged for damage. So essentially, you're going to have one person on Outbreak if you're going to do this. And one person on Outbreak, it takes like, what, like a minute or something to max out your nanites? So really, you're going to be ramping. You're not even going to have this 25% gain. You're going to be ramping from 0 up to 25%. By the time they reach max nanite saturation, the damage phase is probably going to be over. So it's cool. Don't get me wrong. It's quirky, but it's not particularly viable for damage. I would think legendary swords are probably better. The total damage is cool, but total damage is not really that big of a concern, I would say, especially with what we have access to these days. I mean, you could run Numal Pice, there's a bunch of weapons that, like, this much total damage is like almost too much. It's almost like too much. You really never need this much total damage, right? So, I don't know. Bit of an interesting concept, I guess. Let's talk about alternative combos. So some of you brought up to me, you can potentially get off more heavy attacks if you do like an area light attack into heavy attack because the animation's a bit faster. I tried this. Number one, it was inconsistent even when I was like equipping multiple like Lucent Blades copies, which I'm not even sure if they were doing anything. And they also just seemed like less damage efficient as well. So I would just not recommend doing this. You can swap at the end of your timer. So yesterday, I was under the impression that you had to swap immediately after heavy attacking to get the full refund. You can actually just swap as your Nano Assault timer hits like 0. So you saw that in the clip that I was showing you earlier with like the Wolfsbane Outbreak timings. So yeah, with this accounted for, you can do heavy, light, light, heavy, light, light, heavy, light, light, heavy, and then immediately swap off after that last heavy and then get essentially the same effect while still having a lot more empowered damage as part of your combo. Obviously, this doesn't really facilitate having that infinite damage thing because you're spending a lot more ammo in your actual combo before you refund, but it does help a lot. And you'll see here that if we add in this combo to like this specific entry, the damage went up a lot compared to yesterday. And then you can see here that we have much higher total damage with similar DPS to yesterday's kind of Nano Assault 1 Heavy 2 Light here. I have 12 lights to regenerate here. I had a 10 entries in here that was actually like better than this row over here. But I think 10, in my testing at least, when I was just kind of smacking away at the boss by myself, it didn't really seem like 10 lights to regenerate was very consistent. So I just went with 12 because that was like 100% consistent. 11 didn't really make a difference because you weren't just getting extra nanites if you did 11 lights for whatever reason. So yeah, another thing you might be asking is you can technically fit an extra light attack like right here at the end of your combo. However, this actually decreases DPS and total damage because it makes it so that you have less ammo toward the end of your reserves, and it means that you have less like empowered ability to like empower your final combo, if that makes sense. So you actually want to conserve ammo. The only reason you even do any light attacks in between is just to charge up your heavy meter as quickly as possible. And yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say for that. and you can see the DPS and total damage, which we talked about earlier. We talked about the damage profile earlier. So if you want to use this weapon most effectively, again, there's basically just one way I would use it, right? So yesterday I mentioned there were like 2 ways. You could do like high DPS or you could do infinite total. I would say the infinite total thing is not really relevant. I would say if you want to use this weapon like effectively, I suppose, you would just do this, right? So you would do proc your nano assault and fill up the meter. Something nice about this, by the way, is that like some weapons like Grand Overture and Parasite, or I would say Grand Overture specifically, you need to expend ammo, a lot of ammo, to actually get it into its optimal state before damage. Wolfsbane is like, if you kill like a bunch of adds and then you activate Nano Assault at the start of your damage phase, as long as you didn't spend more than 14 ammo getting your Nano Assault for the start of the damage phase, it doesn't make any difference, right? So this is less of a simulated situation. Like, it's definitely very possible to just enter damage with full Nano Assault and ammo, and it's not really going to make a difference whether you spent like a little bit of ammo before the phase or not getting that charge. Whereas with something like Grand Overture, you would need to pick up a heavy brick again to have like the full total damage effect, right? So Wolfsbane, when it comes to damage, you would just like, again, stack it up to full. Make sure you have at least, less than 14 or less ammo missing from your sword when you start damage. You would activate, you would go heavy, light, light while holding a directional key, heavy, light, light, heavy, light, light, heavy. On that last slam, you instantly swap to another weapon, you swap back, and then you kind of pick up those nanites that are coming from your swarm NATO, and then you do light, 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 until right before your meter is about to fill up, and then you activate it again and just keep going. Okay, so the way this ended up is kind of interesting, I guess. It's basically just Lament. They share a very similar identity, right? Where they're exotic, heavy solar swords, and they provide you with sustain on damage. The only difference is Wolfsbane also has, well, I guess Wolfsbane is an anti-barrier. And also Wolfsbane has a DR effect, and Wolfsbane has some catalysts that could potentially be interesting that would increase the total damage even further, or maybe with Burning Ambition would make the damage like a little bit higher. So yeah, that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I will say, don't expect great things out of Burning Ambition, okay? Because obviously in fire teams, the Scorch and the Ignitions are not going to stack across multiple players. And on top of that, I will say, if we go ahead and look at the weapons tab, something that I will caution you about here is take a look at the damage difference between when I include an Ignition versus when I don't include an Ignition, right? So when I tested Wolfsbane on this first entry, this first row here, I just did 1 slam and that's it. 1 slam and that was it, right? Over here, I tested 4 slams, and on the 4th slam, obviously you get enough Scorch to build that Ignition. And so take a look at the damage difference here. The damage difference is very insignificant. It's very, very insignificant on average per heavy attack. And so even with a perk like Burning Ambition, which I assume will ignite the target much more often, I don't expect very great things. I don't expect very great things out of Wolfsbane, even with Burning Ambition. If it got an actual damage perk, then we'd be maybe talking, but I expect maybe most people will take Relentless or maybe Attrition. Honestly, to be completely honest with you, this weapon, I don't know how efficient it is on ammo pickups, but you really don't need Relentless Strikes to get effective total damage out of this weapon. I mean, as you can see here, the total damage is very, very high, and the time to dump is over a minute long. So there's no damage phase really in the game that's sortable right now where you would really be running out of ammo on this weapon. So yeah, that's pretty much all I have to say. I hope you guys enjoyed this little update. Sorry, again, no slides, but again, this was a very short update, so nothing too crazy to talk about. And yeah, we'll be doing more base value testing. And thank you to Tanagen, who again joined me and helped me this morning with holding down left click with his Outbreak on 2 bosses. So yeah, that's it, guys, and you have a good rest of your day.